Headed to the range on a foggy day. I've got a little bit of cartridge development to do for my 6mm build that I'm working on, but I've been putting off long enough doing a revisit to the Tisas 9mm 1911 Commander. And you know, I posted that video, you know, 6 months ago. I hadn't been on the social medias, on YouTube, on Instagram. I hadn't done anything in a while, and so it's like ring rust, you know. So I'm gonna get down there. I'm gonna just kind of do I don't know how many rounds I've put through it. Well over 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 rounds. I mean, I shoot a lot, and so I've done a ton of training with this thing, and I just think it would be prudent to revisit the weapon and, you know, talk about how it's wearing in, how it's functioning, how everything's been going. One point of note is that I really cannot figure out what the specifications of this gun are in certain areas, and I've gotten into arguments with guys about how I'm a know-nothing puke, and I mean, it's true, but it's convoluted, the information. I've got a set of the Tisas 1911 Tank Commander, which is a combat commander sized pistol, and it says on the old ones, you know, like OD green Cerakote or whatever. I can't remember what the title is, but it's more of a green color. They're attempting, obviously, to go for a Parkerized look, like the old GI models or mil-spec models. And these newer models are much more darker gray. I've been told by several people, including the Tisas website, that it's Parkerized, but it says on the case that came with the gun, gray Cerakote. So I don't have any idea how to distinguish between Cerakote and phosphate without doing a chemical reaction on the gun, which I'm obviously not going to do. Point is, I don't care. It's a durable finish. It's rough and durable, and it's fine. But we're not going to get into an argument again about what a moron I am, because I already know I'm a moron. I'm just sharing what I know. But I'm gonna go over the gun. We'll shoot it. We'll shoot some groups. I've adjusted the sights as much as I can without filing on it. But I've got windage centered. I'm still a little bit high on range. Don't really care. It's a close range weapon, and I don't particularly care if I miss 2 or 3 inches high on a thoracic cavity sized target. So we're gonna go through it. We'll shoot it. I got 100 rounds. Not an incredible amount of ammo. I don't feel like making it into a chore today, but we'll definitely demonstrate the reliability and function and accuracy of the gun, because they're really accurate, they're really reliable. I've never had a malfunction while shooting. It seems to have a little bit of feed issues from a loaded magazine change, you know, slide locked open and feeding a first round, but it doesn't seem to have an issue with virgin rounds. It just has an issue with rounds that have been chambered a couple times, and 9mm has that horrible taper to the case. You know, it was engineered to be a reliable service weapon, and it wasn't particularly engineered for what we use a carry weapon for and what modern society does with it. I think it would be much better served to be a straight-walled case, or at least to have so much less taper that the bullet itself still creates a, for lack of a better description, a little bulge in the case, so that way it can't inset the bullet deeper in the case when it pushes against the feed ramp. And it's just, you know, the Germans never got a chance to perfect this in modern society. It's just, it became the world standard, and there's a little more to be had from the cartridge. Actually, this same gun manufactured to these specifications and chambered in like a 380 ACP Wildcat that you could pump up to a little higher pressure with modern powders, that would be optimum, because 380 ACP is a much more straight-walled, much less tapered, if at all, of a case, and I just think it would be more optimum. But all that aside, I've never had a malfunction with new ammo, not even hollow points. I've never had a malfunction with anything except for trying to rechamber ammo that's been chambered 1 or 2 times and has been inset into the case. So we'll go through it, we'll shoot it, we'll do a review of it, and we'll get back to you. So here we'll shoot 30 yards seated off of a rest, 9 shots.
All right, have a good one.
You guys too.
Picture and then press the shot. No, not at all. Well, this is a short little barrel, right? Keeping over a long time.
Do you want to shoot? Yes.
Here we'll shoot standing offhand at 12 yards. Here we'll shoot standing offhand at 12 yards as quickly as I can accurately shoot.
Right outside. And push it through. That's how you do that.
Same drill again. Here I'll shoot at 12 yards offhand standing as quickly as I can accurately shoot.
Search around.
So we shot one group standing as accurately as we could shoot. We shot 2 groups standing as fast as I could accurately shoot. Here, we shot 2 groups seated off the rest at 30 yards. Here I'll just try and get as much footage as I can of just popping the steel with this thing, just so you can see the function.
Fire.
You want to turn off the switch once you get past the yellow light? Not yet. Not yet.
Okay, so here is the Tisas 1911 A1 Tank Commander. Just kind of going through a second overview of this thing. We've got close to 1,000 rounds through it now, if not more. I would say it's closer to 2,000 rounds, but we're gonna be conservative here. My number one gripe isn't about the gun. Maybe the feed ramp, but I don't think there's much else that can be done. Pretty much all the 9mm 1911s I've ever seen have very similar geometry to their feed ramps. The biggest gripe is with the cartridge. So I have never had this gun have a malfunction as long as I keep shooting new ammunition. But we're going to illustrate really quickly here. This is an unchambered 9mm cartridge. This is a cartridge that's been chambered only one time, and not gently chambered. I had the slide locked back, I used the lever to slam the slide into battery, and that's what happened. Now, this particular issue isn't a big deal. It doesn't cause overpressure for the round. It still shoots just fine. It still shoots accurately. But it's presumed to happen not consistently while it's shooting, because it's not a precision procedure. It just happens. Never had it happen with a 45. Never seen it happen with a 380. I think that it's a really, really common condition of the 9mm because this case is tapered so far forward, and there's not a bulge in the brass from the seating of the bullet because of that taper, which this was designed to be a military cartridge to be of the utmost reliability in a wartime situation. But with carry handguns, we take them apart and clean them. We practice with them. We do all kinds of things and then want to be able to chamber and rechamber, clear the gun and rechamber without throwing away a $1 piece of ammunition every time we clear the gun or clean the gun or rechamber a round of ammunition. So my biggest gripe is with the cartridge and not with the gun. 1911s don't do this to everything, but they seem to do it to 9mm a lot. So that's my gripe. The gun functions flawlessly. It functioned flawlessly before, but I put some upgrades on this myself before I even got into it because I wanted a Wilson Combat slide stop, a Wilson Combat thumb safety, and plunger. I've done a little bit of tinkering, gunsmithing to make this safety and this plunger feel really, really well. I've done a trigger job on this gun. And I've also put a Wilson Combat extractor in it. I just wanted the gun to be reliable because I do carry this thing. And I have absolutely no concerns about carrying a $400 gun as my defensive weapon. The thing, it functions flawlessly. It doesn't function flawlessly if I try to chamber this round again from the magazine. So if it's like, this, I know it still shoots because it does this when you shoot the gun, nothing bad happens. So I'll just go ahead and reuse it, right? So I put this on top of the magazine. I go to chamber it. It will absolutely nosedive and jam and have a malfunction, a stoppage, if I try to chamber this round from a locked open slide with a full magazine. However, if I bury this round, I've done all of these tests, if I bury this round in the magazine in here, at full speed cycling of the gun, you can't even tell that you hit this. It eats it, it chews it right through, and does not have a stoppage or a malfunction. Not exactly something I'd want to gamble on, but I've done the test just to check and make sure. But I try and be aware. I try and chamber things gently. I slammed this into battery on purpose so I could illustrate what's going on here. But it definitely, 9mm has its shortcomings, and that really heavy case taper is one of them. Just for reference, is a piece of 45 ACP ammunition, and you can only tell by that tiny bit of light reflecting off of it that this case is actually ever so slightly bulged by the bullet. And so this bullet, no matter how many times I chamber it, will not inset, within reason, will not inset into the cartridge. I just ran a set of calipers down this, and there is actually a measurable 1 to 1.5 thousandths of bulge from the bullet being seated into this case. So that's why I gripe about the 9mm. I'm certain that the 45 has some degree of taper to it. For reliability reasons, it was a really common thing to do back when these cartridges were all getting developed. However, it's not near as much, and let's just for the sake of argument, because I have not researched this, let's say that the 45 ACP is not tapered, then it should be as evidence that it isn't necessary for the reliable functioning of the gun. So that's the over-engineered 9mm Parabellum and my gripes with it. It's an excellent cartridge. It works for its intended purpose, but it has its shortcomings, and I highly recommend anybody that's going to consider cartridges for a defensive handgun to keep this in mind when they make their selection. So on from that, this handgun absolutely functions flawlessly. It shoots very, very accurately. It's an excellent choice for I would say for a beginner starter 1911, for a steel framed gun that costs less than a polymer framed gun. I mean, you literally cannot get a better deal than that. This is an excellent range weapon. It's an excellent defensive weapon. I put a tiny amount of orange paint on the front sight so that way I can get a better picture. It didn't take much to make this thing a really slick shooting gun. The recoil is absolutely negligible. It's like shooting a .22 pistol. It's just an excellent choice. Now, this is the box that this Tisas came with. And this particular Tisas came with a spare set of stocks, a bushing wrench, a trigger lock, a small cleaning kit, which I don't use or need particularly, but it is for what it's worth, a lockable case. It's just a tamper and child resistant case. It's nice that they do that. But here we have 9mm, 4¼ inch. That's a combat commander size, gray Cerakote. It came with a set of walnut stocks that I put on my Kimber, and I put the Kimber stocks on this because this recoils less and the Kimber stocks are really junk. And the Kimber could use the actual nice checkered knurled stocks more than this. But it says gray Cerakote on it. Everybody's argued with me that it's Parkerized. It very well might be Parkerized, but the box says Cerakote. Their website says Parkerized. My other 1911s from this same company are absolutely for certain not Parkerized, and they are absolutely for certain still says Cerakote. I am assuming that it is Cerakote because it says so and it resembles. I don't know if they're just reusing stickers or they forgot. I don't know what their deal is. This may or may not be Parkerized. It resembles Parkerized. Not sure. From there, we have just specification stuff. I mean, this is about as mil spec as they can come. It's got an arch mainspring housing, which I prefer now that I've owned a couple of them. It really, really just fits better in my paw. I like it better. It has the rondel hammer, which is not a mil spec component. Okay, so I left off at rondel hammer here. I had a Colt in exactly this configuration, mil spec everything, but with a rondel hammer, and it was a Colt Combat Commander, and I got it stolen some years ago, and it was not as nice of a handgun as these. It was a prettier handgun. It was blued finished and whatnot, but these are a much less rattly, loose handgun compared to the Colt, and they're a much more accurate handgun compared to the Colt. I own one of these in 45 ACP as well as this 9mm model, and I've never had a stoppage in either of these handguns from Tisas with hollow point or full metal jacket ammunition, and I regularly had jams and stoppages in my Colt, and that's a huge failing factor for me. It's been a good handgun. My only gripe for fit and finish is this tiny bit of daylight that I can see between the trigger and the frame. And it's been so long, I cannot answer as to whether my Colt had that or was a better fit and finish. But I definitely remember enough about the Colt to know that it had jams and stoppages regularly, and especially with hollow point ammunition, so it could not be trusted as a defensive weapon with what I would consider responsible defensive carry ammunition in it. The trigger that I've done on this pistol, I just took it all apart, polished everything. I did not change the geometry of anything. I just polished everything. And this pistol has a nice clean break. So there is a second stage. So first stage, and when you hit the back wall of the second stage, it is a little bit heavy but crisp. The reset comes with some force. Let's see if we can illustrate this. See, it definitely forces you, it punches you forward. So if you're riding trigger resets, it's really nice, and it's a nice short travel. So for being a stock trigger, you know, a factory handgun, that's really, really nice. So from here, we'll move into how the gun shoots. And here we have 9 shots standing at 12 yards for 3 inches, which is a darn nice group. And here, and now this was standing offhand as accurately as I could shoot the gun. And here we have 18 shots standing offhand as fast as I could accurately shoot the gun, quickly. Now, this isn't rapid fire, but as quickly as I could get a very, very, very good sight picture and touch off another one. And so that's 7 inches for 18 shots, which is still excellent to me. Here we have 2 targets that I shot seated and off of a rest. And so we have a 5.5 inch group here, aiming at the bullseye. 30 yards, 5.5 inch group for 9 shots. And here we have seated off the rest, 30 yards, 3 3/4 inch group for 9 shots. So the gun is as accurate or more accurate than most shooters, and comes with 2 of these magazines, and the magazines are still functioning flawlessly. I shoot the piss out of this thing and they're still chugging right along. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and take this gun apart and we'll clean it, and you can get a little better look at some of the wear patterns and some of the internals. So we've got a cleared firearm here, and we're going to go ahead and take this dude apart. I never use a bushing wrench. I just push my finger down hard enough to get the bushing turned without rubbing on anything. And this comes apart absolutely the same as any other mil-spec 1911. I've noticed that the buffer has very, very loose fit to the spring in the 9mm, both of the ones that I own. And the 45, it's much more snug, like I would typically expect. And the barrel is coated with whatever phosphate or Cerakote as the rest of the gun. And here's the gun. So for cleaning, I usually take first a fresh paper towel and I wipe the grease and grit. And this gun was cleaned last time I fired it, so we only have 100 rounds of grit on this thing right now, which is not very much. But I just like to wipe the high spots and get the grease and grit removed. The barrel, I take the recoil lugs and get absolutely everything I can get with a dry towel out of the square corners. I wipe down the barrel. I wipe down the feed ramp. It's a nice shiny polished feed ramp. I wipe down the breech of the barrel. I take the slide, I just dry wipe the slide rails. I come in here to the recoil lugs of the slide and I just wipe those down. I come from the top side and I wipe the actual bolt face of the slide down. And then from there, I take an old Q-tip and I just try to wipe in the claw of the extractor. I take it and I take a little bit inside the recoil lugs, wipe around the bushing a little bit, wipe around the spring cap a little bit. Nothing crazy. I don't go crazy cleaning these things. So once that's clean, I take the barrel. Sometimes I run a 38 caliber brush through it and sometimes I don't. This time will absolutely be a don't. But I take a large patch, I soak it with hops number 9. I never use copper fouling erasing cleaners on a handgun because I don't think it matters the slightest bit. But I soak this patch pretty liberally with the hops. I go from the chamber side. I hold my finger over the end of the muzzle. This particular time I'm going to have to shove too hard. But what I do is I just run the patch down to the end of the muzzle, to the crown, and then reverse. And I do that a few times because I think a little bit of vigor is good for it rather than just running a patch straight through. You can see a little more crud comes off in a few more passes, and it just soaks that bore a little bit better with the cleaning solvent. And then from here I take dry patches, maybe 2 or 3 of them, doesn't take much. Pistols, in my experience, don't foul very much at all, and the fouling comes clean very, very easily, except in the case of lead fouling, which takes a little bit more vigorous brushing. But here we've got a patch that is clean enough for my purposes. We'll put a white background on here and see if we can't get a little light on the subject. So as for wear, as far as wear is concerned, I've got a little bit of shine starting to appear on top of my chamber and around my recoil lugs and right around my barrel bushing, which is absolutely normal. I've got a little bit of shine here where the barrel rubs against the frame and slide, which absolutely is normal. This thing, keep in mind, was fully coated with this coating when I purchased it. On the slide, we have some pretty significant finish wear here, but I wouldn't call it wear of the handgun. It's just finish wear. It's just breaking in. It's polishing itself as you shoot it and shoot it and shoot it. This gun probably won't even hit its optimum reliability performance until, oh shoot, I would say 5,000 rounds into its service life. Like, I might even replace a recoil spring before this slide is even what I would consider fully broken in. The frame rails are beginning to show some signs of, this is actually the ejector on a 1911. I don't know how familiar folks are, but this is a 1911 ejector, if you've ever wondered what this particular thing is doing on the slide. But I'm starting to get, you can see some polishing beginning to occur here on top of the rails, and on the sides of the rails. It's beginning to polish itself in and really just get smooth as glass, this operation. This particular handgun, let me get this apart here. So this particular handgun, I said that I had put a Wilson Combat thumb safety on it. And you can see on this thumb safety where I've done a little bit of polishing to make it operate as smoothly as I like. I like these things to be pretty slick, but to have the right amount of detent. And I've also polished on the plunger a little bit to give it the feel that I like. Tactile, you know, I don't want it to come off of safe if I don't want, and I definitely don't want it to be overly difficult to get into safe, but I definitely want it to be a little bit stiff and to have a little bit of a tactile feel to it. It has a nice tactile detent to it this way, but not rough or difficult in any way. Some might complain that this has a little bit too much of a slow, creepy down from safe to fire. I don't particularly care because I always do that in a swift motion anyways when I'm holding the weapon. And then I keep my thumb on it as a point of contact on the weapon when I'm taking a grip and firing. We'll get this thing put back together really quickly and I'll show you how I lube it. So for lube, I just use the cheapest lube I can find, which this particular lube is Lucas Toolbox Buddy. I don't know how cheap it was, but it was free for me. Someone gave it to me, so that's as cheap as it gets. I put a couple dots on the recoil lugs. I put a tiny bit around the barrel and bushing. That was probably too much, but it's what came out of the jug, and it doesn't matter to me how much. So I replaced the barrel. I replaced the recoil spring and buffer. I oil the buffer and spring right where the spring goes into it. I apply lube to the slide rails, but not the frame rails. I like to get everything lined up perfectly before I try to replace the slide stop, which is also the barrel's tilt bushing pin. I apply forward pressure into my slide stop at the same time as upward pressure. I just try to set it in exactly the right spot, and then I usually can snap it in exactly where I like in one motion. So then everything's together. I replace the barrel bushing. I replace the spring cap. I take the barrel bushing and I gently set it on the spring cap like this, and then depress it so that my finger's completely out of the way and it's fully installed. We'll function check, fires, safety works, safety disengages, everything's perfect. And so that's how I do.